The bitter winter wind howled through Oregon City like a vengeful spirit, carrying with it snow that fell in thick, unrelenting sheets. It was the harshest December of 1876 that anyone could remember, the kind that froze a man's breath before it left his lips and turned tears to ice on cheeks. On this merciless night, Abram Newell urged his exhausted horse forward, squinting against the blinding white, hoping to reach his cabin before they both succumbed to the cold. Abram was returning from a cattle drive that had taken him far from his homestead, his pockets heavier with coins but his spirit weary from the journey. The 30-year-old cowboy had made a name for himself in Oregon Territory as a reliable rancher who could handle the most stubborn of steers. His broad shoulders carried the weight of years spent under the unforgiving sun, and his hands were calloused from work that never seemed to end. Yet tonight, those strong hands trembled as they gripped the reins, nearly frozen despite his thick leather gloves. As he approached the bend in the trail that would lead him home, something caught his eye, a dark shape against the pristine white of the snow. At first, he thought it might be a fallen tree branch or perhaps a deer that hadn't survived the storm. But as he drew closer, the shape took on a human form. "Whoa," he commanded his horse, sliding from the saddle with a wince as his boots crunched into the deep snow. What he found stole the breath from his lungs. A woman lay half buried in the snow, her dress torn and bloodied. Her back bore the unmistakable marks of a whip, the lashes fresh and cruel against her pale skin. Her lips were blue, her eyes closed, and for a terrible moment, Abram thought he'd come upon a corpse. But then he saw at the faintest rise and fall of her chest, a whisper of life in a body that should by all rights have surrendered to the cold. He dropped to his knees beside her, brushing snow from her face with gentle hands. "Miss, can you hear me?" he called, leaning close. There was no response, just the weak puff of breath that told him she clung to life by the thinnest of threads. Without hesitation, Abram removed his heavy coat and wrapped it around her, lifting her with care into his arms. She was lighter than he expected, her body limp as a rag doll. "Hold on," he murmured, though he doubted she could hear him. "Just hold on." He managed to get her onto his horse, climbing up behind her and cradling her against his chest to share what warmth he had left. The horse protested with a snort, but obeyed when Abram kicked its sides, urging it forward with newfound urgency. His cabin appeared through the swirling snow, a simple wooden structure that had never looked so welcoming. Abram dismounted with the woman still in his arms, kicking open the door and hurrying inside. He laid her gently on his bed, working quickly to build up the fire that had died down to embers during his absence. As flames leaped to life in the hearth, Abram turned back to the stranger in his bed. In the flickering light, he could see her more clearly now. She was young, perhaps in her early 20s, with hair the color of dark honey that fell in tangled waves around her shoulders. The cruel marks on her back told a story of brutality that made his blood boil. Who would do such a thing? He wondered aloud, his voice tight with anger. He fetched clean cloths and a basin of water, warming it by the fire before beginning the delicate task of cleaning her wounds. As he worked, he spoke to her, hoping his voice might pull her back from the brink. "My name's Abram," he said. "Abram Newell. You're safe now, miss. I don't know what happened to you, but you're safe here." Throughout the night, Abram kept vigil at her bedside, replacing cold compresses on her forehead when fever set in, tending to her wounds with a gentleness that belied his rough exterior. By morning, the storm had passed, leaving the world outside blanketed in pristine white. The woman stirred, her eyelids fluttering. Abram leaned forward, holding his breath as her eyes opened fully for the first time. They were a startling shade of green, like spring leaves after rain. where her voice broke, barely a whisper. "You're in my cabin, miss," Abram said, offering her a cup of water. "I found you in the snow last night. You were hurt." She tried to sit up, then gasped in pain, her hand flying to her back. "Easy now," Abram cautioned. "Those wounds need time to heal." "My name is Olivia," she said after taking a sip of water. "Olivia Taylor." "Miss Taylor," Abram acknowledged with a nod. "Can you tell me what happened to you? Who did this?" Olivia's eyes clouded with fear, and her hand trembled so violently that water spilled from the cup. "He'll kill me if he finds me," she whispered. "No one's going to hurt you again," Abram promised, taking the cup from her shaking hands. "Not while I'm around." Olivia seemed unconvinced, her eyes darting to the windows as if expecting her tormentor to materialize from the snow. "You don't know him. He has connections." "Rest now," Abram said, seeing how the brief conversation had drained what little strength she had. "We'll talk more when you're stronger." Over the next few days, Olivia's physical condition improved slowly. The fever broke, and the wounds on her back began to heal, though Abram knew they would leave scars. He fashioned a pallet for himself near the fire, giving her the bed. During the day, he tended to his livestock and chopped wood, keeping the cabin warm against the continuing cold. It was 3 days before Olivia felt strong enough to share her story. They sat at Abram's small table, steaming bowls of rabbit stew before them. Outside, twilight painted the snow-covered landscape in shades of pink and purple. "I was working as a maid in Portland," Olivia began, her eyes fixed on the stew she barely touched. "For Judge Theodore Manning." Abram knew the name. Manning was renowned throughout Oregon Territory for his harsh sentences and rumored corruption. "He took an interest in me," Olivia continued, her voice flat. "When I refused his advances, he accused me of stealing a silver pocket watch. No one questioned him. He's a judge, after all." She took a shaky breath. "I was sentenced to 10 lashes. After it was done, instead of taking me back to jail, the sheriff, who's Manning's cousin, drove me out here and left me to die. Said it would save the county the trouble of feeding me." Abram's hand tightened around his spoon. "That's not justice, that's murder." "It doesn't matter now," Olivia said, finally looking up at him. "I can't go back. Manning will just find another charge, and next time—" She didn't finish the thought. "You don't have to go back," Abram said. "You can stay here until you're healed properly. After that, well, we'll figure something out." Olivia studied him, suspicion clear in her green eyes. "Why would you help me? You don't know me." "I know enough," Abram replied. "I know you didn't deserve what happened to you, and I know I couldn't live with myself if I turned you away." "Thank you," she said after a long moment. "But I won't be a burden. I can cook and clean, earn my keep." "You'll do no such thing, not until those wounds are properly healed," Abram insisted. "After that, well, I won't turn down help around here. It's not easy managing alone." As January gave way to February, Olivia grew stronger. The angry welts on her back faded to pink scars, and color returned to her cheeks. She began to help around the cabin, proving herself to be an excellent cook and a diligent worker. Abram found himself looking forward to returning from his chores to find her there, the cabin filled with the aroma of fresh bread or stew. They developed a routine, sharing meals and stories by the fire in the evenings. Abram told her of his life, how he'd come west from Pennsylvania after the war, seeking a fresh start away from the memories of battlefields and lost comrades. How he'd worked as a ranch hand until he saved enough to buy this small parcel of land, where he raised cattle and horses. Olivia shared less, her past before Portland shrouded in vague references to a family back east who had fallen on hard times. Abram didn't press her, sensing the pain that lay beneath her reticence. One evening, as snow fell softly outside the cabin windows. Abram returned from the barn to find Olivia standing before a small mirror he kept hanging by the door, trying to see the scars on her back. "They're healing well," he said quietly, startling her. Olivia quickly pulled her blouse back into place, her cheeks flushing. "I was just wondering." "They'll fade more with time," Abram said, hanging his hat on a peg, "but I'm afraid they'll never disappear completely." "A reminder," Olivia murmured, "as if I could forget." "A reminder that you survived," Abram corrected, moving to stand before her. "That you're stronger than what was done to you." Olivia looked up at him, her eyes bright with unshed tears. "Sometimes I don't feel very strong." Without thinking, Abram reached out, his calloused hand cupping her cheek. "You are the strongest person I've ever known, Olivia Taylor." Something changed between them in that moment, a shift as subtle as the first hint of spring beneath winter's snow. Olivia didn't pull away from his touch, and Abram found himself reluctant to remove his hand. The spell was broken by the distant howl of a wolf. Abram dropped his hand, clearing his throat. "Sounds like we're in for a cold night. I'll add more wood to the fire." As February progressed, the weather began to show hints of softening. Patches of ground emerged from beneath the melting snow, and buds appeared on the trees. With the change in seasons came a change in Olivia. She ventured outside more, helping Abram with the spring preparations, planting vegetables in the small garden plot, mending fences damaged by winter storms. One afternoon, as they worked side by side repairing the chicken coop, Abram asked, "What will you do when spring comes in earnest?" Olivia paused, a nail held between her lips as she positioned a board. She took the nail and began hammering it into place before answering. "I don't know. I can't stay here forever." "Why not?" The question escaped Abram before he could consider it, surprising them both. Olivia looked at him, her hammer suspended mid-strike. "What do you mean?" Abram set down his own tools, suddenly finding it hard to meet her gaze. "I mean you could stay, if you wanted to. The place runs better with you here and—" he hesitated. "And I've grown accustomed to your company." "Accustomed to my company," Olivia repeated, a small smile playing at the corners of her mouth. "Is that a proposal, Mr. Newell?" Abram felt heat rise to his face. "Not as such, no, I just meant—" "I know what you meant," Olivia said, her smile fading, "and it's kind of you. But Manning won't stop looking for me. If he found me here, he'd make trouble for you too." "Let him try," Abram said, his voice hardening. "I'm not afraid of him or his connections." "You should be," Olivia said quietly. "Men like that don't play by the rules the rest of us follow." Before Abram could respond, the distant sound of hoofbeats reached them. They both froze, listening as the sound grew louder. "Were you expecting visitors?" Olivia asked, her voice tight with fear. Abram shook his head, reaching for the rifle he kept nearby when working outside. "Get to the cabin." "Now." Olivia hesitated only a moment before running toward the cabin, keeping low. Abram positioned himself between the approaching riders and the cabin, rifle at the ready. 3 men appeared on the road leading to his property. As they drew closer, Abram recognized the one in the center, Sheriff Wade Perkins, Manning's cousin and the man who had left Olivia to die in the snow. "Afternoon, Newell," Perkins called as they reached the yard. "Mighty cold welcome for the law." "Didn't know it was the law," Abram replied evenly. "Just being cautious." "What brings you out this way, Sheriff?" Perkins dismounted, his boots squelching in the mud. His 2 deputies remained on horseback, hands resting near their holstered guns. "Looking for an escaped prisoner," Perkins said, his small eyes scanning the property. "Woman by the name of Olivia Taylor, convicted thief, dangerous, they say." "Haven't seen any dangerous women around here," Abram said. "Just me and the livestock." Perkins's gaze settled on the cabin where smoke curled from the chimney. "Mind if we take a look inside? Cold ride out here." "Wouldn't mind warming up a bit." "I mind," Abram said, not moving. "You've got no warrant and I've got work to do." The sheriff's face hardened. "Don't need a warrant when I'm pursuing an escaped felon, Newell. Now step aside." "She's not here," Abram insisted. "And even if she was, she's no felon, just a woman who caught the wrong man's eye." A slow smile spread across Perkins's face. "So you have seen her. Interesting." Abram realized his mistake too late. He raised his rifle slightly. "I think you'd better leave, Sheriff." "You threatening an officer of the law, Newell?" Perkins asked, his hand moving to his gun. "Not threatening. Just suggesting that 3 against 1 might seem like poor odds to some, but I like my chances. Especially when I've got the high ground and nothing to lose." Tension crackled between them like lightning before a storm. Finally, Perkins spat in the dirt. "This ain't over, Newell. That girl belongs to the judge and he wants her back." "She doesn't belong to anyone," Abram said. "And if Manning wants to claim otherwise, he can come here himself instead of sending his dog to do his dirty work." Perkins's face flushed with anger, but he didn't draw his weapon. Instead, he mounted his horse again. "We'll be back. With a warrant and enough men to make sure you regret crossing us." Abram watched until they disappeared down the road before lowering his rifle and hurrying to the cabin. Inside, he found Olivia standing by the window, a kitchen knife clutched in her trembling hand. "They're gone," Abram said. "For now." Olivia set down the knife, her face ashen. "They know I'm here. They suspect," Abram corrected. "But they'll be back, and next time they'll bring more men." "I have to leave," Olivia said, already moving to gather her few belongings. "Tonight." "If I go north across the Columbia, no." Abram caught her arm. "Running isn't the answer. They'll just keep hunting you." "What choice do I have?" Olivia cried. "I won't let you get hurt because of me. We fight," Abram said simply. "We stand our ground and fight back the only way that matters against men like Manning." "How?" Olivia asked, desperation in her voice. "The law," Abram said. "Manning may think he is the law in these parts, but there are bigger powers. The territorial governor, the federal courts. Manning's not untouchable." "You're talking about taking on the most powerful man in the county with nothing but your word against his," Olivia said. "It's madness." "Not just my word," Abram said. "Your scars tell a story no one can deny, and Manning's not as well liked as he thinks. I'd wager there are others who have suffered under his version of justice." Olivia shook her head, unconvinced. "Even if you're right, it would take months to build a case against him, months we don't have." "Then we buy time," Abram said, "but not by running. That just confirms their story that you're a criminal." They argued late into the night, Olivia insisting that fleeing was their only option, Abram equally adamant that standing their ground was the only way to truly free her from Manning's shadow. Neither convinced the other, and they finally fell into an uneasy silence. The next morning, Abram woke to find Olivia gone. Panic seized him as he searched the cabin, finding no sign of her except a note on the table. "I'm sorry," it read in her neat hand. "I can't let you risk everything for me. Thank you for saving my life. I won't forget your kindness." Abram crumpled the note in his fist, cursing under his breath. She couldn't have gotten far on foot in the early morning hours, with the road still muddy from melting snow. He saddled his horse and set out, following the most likely route north toward the Columbia River. He found her 3 miles from the cabin, trudging along the muddy road with a small bundle of belongings over her shoulder. At the sound of his approach, she turned, her face a mixture of resignation and defiance. "Go back, Abram," she called as he dismounted. "Please, this is the only way." "No, it isn't," he said, closing the distance between them. "And I can prove it. Come back with me just for one more day. Let me show you what I have in mind. If you still want to leave after that, I won't stop you." Olivia studied his face, searching for something in his eyes. Whatever she found there must have convinced her, because she nodded slowly. One day. They rode back to the cabin together, Olivia's arms wrapped around Abram's waist, her cheek resting against his back. The simple contact sent a warmth through him that had nothing to do with the spring sun. Back at the cabin, Abram revealed his plan. "There's a newspaper editor in Oregon City, name of Howard Parker. He's been looking for stories to expose corruption in the territory. Your experience with Manning would give him exactly what he needs. And put a target on his back as well," Olivia pointed out. "Parker's not afraid of making enemies," Abram assured her. "He's taken on powerful men before. Even if he publishes my story, it's still my word against Manning's," Olivia said. "And Manning has the law on his side." "Not all of it," Abram said. "There's a federal marshal, James Donovan, who's been investigating corruption in the territorial courts. Parker mentioned him in his last article. If we can get your story to Donovan." Hope flickered in Olivia's eyes for the first time. "You really think this could work?" "I do," Abram said. "But we need to move quickly. Perkins will be back, and next time he won't leave so easily." They spent the day preparing, Olivia writing down every detail of her experience with Manning while Abram gathered supplies for a journey to Oregon City. They would leave at first light, taking a roundabout route to avoid the main roads where Perkins might have men watching. As night fell, they sat by the fire, the weight of what lay ahead settling over them. Abram noticed Olivia shivering despite the warmth of the flames. "Are you cold?" he asked, reaching for another log to add to the fire. "No," she said, hugging her knees to her chest. "Just scared. What if this doesn't work? What if Manning is too powerful even for a federal marshal?" Abram moved to sit beside her, his shoulder touching hers. "Then we keep fighting. Or yes, we run. Together, but first we try." Olivia turned to look at him, her face illuminated by the dancing firelight. "Why are you doing this, Abram? Why risk everything for someone you barely know?" Abram met her gaze steadily. "Because I know enough. I know you're brave and kind and stronger than you believe. I know you deserve justice, not just for yourself but for anyone else Manning has hurt. And I know that since I found you in that snow, nothing in my life has felt the same." Olivia's breath caught. "What do you mean?" "I mean," Abram said, his voice low, "that the thought of you leaving tears something inside me. I mean that these past weeks with you here have been the happiest I can remember. I mean that I—" He hesitated, then plunged ahead. "I care for you, Olivia. More than I should, perhaps, given our circumstances." Olivia's eyes glistened with tears. "I care for you too," she whispered, "and it terrifies me, because caring means having something to lose." Abram reached for her hand, enfolding it in his larger one. "Some things are worth the risk." In the quiet of the cabin, with only the crackling fire to witness, Abram leaned forward and pressed his lips to hers. The kiss was gentle, questioning, and Olivia answered by curling her fingers into the fabric of his shirt, drawing him closer. When they separated, both were breathing rapidly, the air between them charged with unspoken promises. "Whatever happens tomorrow," Abram said, his voice rough with emotion, "know that I will stand beside you. We face this together." Olivia nodded, a tear slipping down her cheek. "Together." Dawn broke clear and cold over the mountains as they set out for Oregon City. They rode Abram's strongest horse, taking little used logging trails to avoid the main roads. The journey would take most of the day, but they hoped to reach the city by nightfall. As they rode, Olivia told Abram more about her life before Manning, how she'd grown up in Boston, the daughter of a school teacher who died of consumption when Olivia was 16. How she'd worked as a seamstress until the opportunity came to travel west with a family needing a nanny for their children. The family settled in Portland, she explained as they paused to rest the horse at midday. When the children were old enough for school, they didn't need me anymore. That's when I took the position in Manning's household. You've traveled further than most, Abram observed, passing her a canteen of water. Not by choice, Olivia said with a small smile. Life just seemed to push me from one place to the next, until now. Abram felt his heart quicken at the implication in her words. And now I've found a reason to stand my ground, Olivia said, her eyes meeting his. Whatever happens in Oregon City, I don't want to run anymore. They reached the outskirts of Oregon City as the sun was setting, casting long shadows across the muddy streets. The town was bustling despite the late hour, with saloons and restaurants spilling light and noise onto the boardwalks. Abram guided them to a small hotel on a side street, away from the main thoroughfare. We'll stay here tonight, he said, helping Olivia down from the horse. First thing in the morning, we'll find Parker. The clerk at the hotel desk raised an eyebrow at the sight of them travel-worn and without luggage, but Abram's coins quickly smoothed any concerns. They were given a room on the second floor, overlooking an alley where the sounds of the city were muffled. The room was small, with a single bed and a washstand. Abram immediately offered to find another room or to sleep on the floor, but Olivia shook her head. We've shared closer quarters in the cabin, she said, and I'd feel safer with you near. They settled into an uneasy rest, both too aware of what the morning might bring to sleep deeply. Abram lay on his side, careful to give Olivia space, but in the night she shifted closer, her back pressing against his chest, seeking warmth and comfort. His arm curved around her waist, protective even in sleep. Morning came with a knock on their door. Abram was instantly alert, reaching for his gun as he moved to answer. "Who's there?" he called through the closed door. "Parker," came the reply. "Howard Parker. I heard you were looking for me." Abram exchanged a surprised glance with Olivia before opening the door a crack, his gun still ready. A thin man with spectacles and ink-stained fingers stood in the hallway, looking more curious than threatening. "How did you know we were looking for you?" Abram asked suspiciously. "Small town, Mr. Newell," Parker said. "The hotel clerk's wife works for me. When he mentioned a rancher and a woman asking about me, I thought I'd save you the trouble of finding my office." Abram hesitated, then opened the door wider. Parker entered, his sharp eyes taking in Olivia, who stood by the window, her posture tense. "Miss Taylor, I presume?" Parker said. Olivia's eyes widened. "How do you know my name?" "Because your face has been on wanted posters all over the territory for weeks," Parker said. "Though I must say, they don't do you justice. Dangerous thief and escaped convict seems at odds with the woman before me." "Those charges are false," Abram said firmly. "That's why we're here. We have a story for you, Mr. Parker. One that involves Judge Theodore Manning and his particular brand of justice." Parker's eyes lit with interest. "Manning? I've heard whispers about him for years, but no one's been willing to go on record." "I will," Olivia said, stepping forward. "I'll tell you everything. But we need your help in return." They spent the morning in Parker's small office behind the Oregon City Herald building. Olivia recounted her story while Parker took notes, occasionally asking questions that revealed he knew more about Manning's activities than he initially let on. "You're not the first woman he's targeted," Parker said grimly when Olivia had finished. "Just the first to escape and live to tell about it." "Will you print the story?" Abram asked. Parker removed his spectacles, polishing them with a handkerchief. "I will, but it won't be enough on its own." Manning has friends in high places. What you need is federal intervention. Marshal Donovan, Olivia said, remembering their plan. Can you arrange a meeting? Better than that, Parker said, replacing his spectacles. He's in town, investigating another matter. I can take you to him this afternoon. While they waited for Parker to arrange the meeting, Abram and Olivia returned to the hotel. The weight of what they were undertaking pressed heavily on both of them. Are you sure about this? Abram asked as they sat in their room, a tray of untouched food between them. Once Parker publishes your story, there's no going back. Manning will know exactly where to find you. I'm sure, Olivia said, though her hands trembled slightly as she reached for a cup of tea. I can't keep looking over my shoulder forever, and if what Parker says is true, there are other women who have suffered at Manning's hands. Someone needs to stop him. Abram covered her hand with his. You're the bravest person I've ever known. Olivia turned her hand to clasp his, drawing strength from his touch. Not brave, just tired of being afraid. When Parker returned, he brought with him a tall man with a weathered face and the unmistakable bearing of authority. Marshal James Donovan filled the small hotel room with his presence, his keen eyes assessing both Abram and Olivia before he spoke. Mr. Parker has told me something of your situation, Miss Taylor, Donovan said, his voice deep and measured. I'd like to hear the rest from you. Once again, Olivia recounted her ordeal, her voice growing stronger as she spoke. When she finished, she added, I can show you the scars if you need proof. Donovan shook his head. That won't be necessary, Miss Taylor, I believe you. Your story aligns with other reports I've received about Judge Manning. Then you'll help us, Abram asked, hope rising in his chest. I've been building a case against Manning for months, Donovan said. Your testimony could be the piece that brings it all together. But I won't lie to you, it will be dangerous. Manning won't go down without a fight, and he has allies throughout the county. What do you need from us? Olivia asked. Your sworn statement to start, Donovan said, and then your courage. Manning will need to stand trial, and you'll need to testify against him in open court. In Portland. Olivia's face paled at the thought of returning to the city where she'd suffered so much. No, Donovan said. In Salem, before the territorial court, Manning has less influence there. Relief washed over Olivia's features. When would this happen? The wheels of justice turned slowly, Donovan admitted. It could be months before the case comes to trial. In the meantime, you'll need to stay somewhere safe. She'll stay with me, Abram said without hesitation. My place is remote, and I can protect her. Donovan's gaze shifted between them, noting something in their proximity that caused a slight smile to touch his lips. That may work for now, but once Parker publishes his story, Manning will know exactly where to look. So we don't publish yet, Parker suggested. We wait until the marshal has gathered enough evidence to arrest Manning. And how long will that take? Abram asked, frustration edging his voice. Not as long as you might think, Donovan said. Miss Taylor's testimony is a key piece, but not the only one. I've been working with other victims, witnesses to Manning's corruption. If all goes well, I could have enough for an arrest within weeks, not months. Hope, fragile but undeniable, blossomed in Olivia's expression. So what do we do now? You give me your sworn statement, Donovan said. Then you return to Mr. Newell's ranch and wait. I'll send word when it's time to move. That night, after giving their statements to Donovan, Abram and Olivia lay side by side in the hotel bed, neither able to sleep despite the exhaustion of the day. You think he'll really be able to arrest Manning? Olivia whispered in the darkness. Donovan seems like a man who gets what he's after, Abram replied. And he's been working on this for longer than we realized. We just need to trust him. Olivia rolled onto her side to face him, though in the darkness he could only make out the outline of her features. What happens after? If Manning is convicted, I mean. What do you want to happen? Abram asked, his heart beating faster. I want. Olivia's voice faltered, then strengthened. I want to stay with you, if you'll have me. Abram reached for her, drawing her closer until he could feel the warmth of her breath against his face. I want that too, more than I can say. Their lips met in the darkness, the kiss deeper and more urgent than before, carrying with it all the emotions they'd been holding back. Abram's hand moved to cup her cheek, then slid into her hair, cradling her head as if she were the most precious thing in the world. I love you, he whispered against her lips. I think I have since I found you in that snow. I love you too, Olivia said, her voice breaking with emotion. You saved my life in more ways than you know. They held each other through the night, finding comfort in closeness as they faced an uncertain future together. The journey back to Abram's ranch was tense but uneventful. They took the same back trails, watchful for any sign they were being followed. But if Manning or Perkins had men searching for them, they managed to evade them. Spring was in full bloom when they returned, the land transformed by new growth. The ranch seemed to welcome them home, the familiar surroundings a balm to their troubled spirits. It feels different now, Olivia said as they settled back into the cabin. Coming back by choice, knowing I'm not just hiding. Abram smiled, watching her move about the small space with a confidence that hadn't been there before. It's your home too now if you want it to be. Olivia paused in her unpacking, turning to face him. I do want that, not just until this is over, but after, for good. Abram crossed to her, taking her hands in his. Then we should make it official. Marry me, Olivia. Not because you need protection or because of what we're facing with Manning, but because I love you and can't imagine my life without you in it. Tears filled Olivia's eyes, but they were accompanied by a smile that lit her entire face. Yes, she said simply. Yes, I'll marry you. The days that followed were filled with a strange mixture of tension and joy. They went about their daily tasks, tending to the livestock, planting crops, preparing for the future they hoped to share, all while waiting for word from Donovan. Every unexpected sound made them reach for weapons, and they never ventured far from the cabin without being armed. A week after their return, Pastor Miller from the small church near Oregon City rode out to perform a simple wedding ceremony. The only witnesses were Howard Parker and the pastor's wife, but the lack of guests did nothing to diminish the profound happiness of the occasion. Olivia wore a new dress of pale blue calico that Abram had purchased in Oregon City, with wildflowers in her hair. As they exchanged vows before the pastor, with the mountains rising majestically in the background, Abram felt a sense of rightness settle over him. Whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together. That night, as husband and wife, they came together with a tenderness born of deep love and trust. Abram was gentle with Olivia, mindful of the scars that still marked her back, but she met him with a passion that swept away any hesitation. In each other's arms, they found a sanctuary from the world's cruelties, a place where the past could not reach them. The weeks passed, and spring gave way to early summer. They received occasional messages from Donovan via Parker, brief notes indicating that the investigation was progressing but offering few details. The waiting was hardest on Olivia, who alternated between determined optimism and crushing anxiety about the future. What if it never happens? She asked one evening as they sat on the porch, watching the sunset paint the mountains gold. What if Donovan can't gather enough evidence or Manning's influence is too strong? Abram took her hand, his thumb tracing circles on her palm. Then we make a new plan. We could leave the territory, start fresh somewhere else. California maybe, or back east. You'd leave your ranch. After all the work you've put into it, the ranch is just land and buildings, Abram said. You're my home now, Olivia. Wherever you are, that's where I want to be. Tears glistened in her eyes, but before she could respond, the sound of approaching riders reached them. Abram was on his feet in an instant, rifle in hand, as he moved to stand protectively in front of Olivia. 2 riders appeared on the road, and Abram's tension eased slightly as he recognized Parker. The man riding beside him was unfamiliar younger, with the look of someone who'd ridden hard for many miles. Newell, Parker called as they approached. We bring news. Abram lowered his rifle, though he remained vigilant as the men dismounted. What kind of news? Parker's face was alight with excitement. The best kind. Manning has been arrested. Donovan took him into custody this morning along with Sheriff Perkins and 2 other officials. Olivia gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. Truly, it's over. Not entirely, Parker cautioned. There's still the trial, which will likely be months away. But Manning is behind bars, and Donovan has enough evidence that the territorial governor has taken a personal interest in the case. What evidence? Abram asked, still hardly daring to believe that their ordeal might be nearing its end. Testimony from 5 other women with stories similar to Mrs. Newell's, Parker said. Plus financial records showing bribes, documents proving Manning manipulated cases for his own benefit, and a sworn statement from his former clerk detailing years of corruption. Relief washed over Abram like a cleansing rain. He turned to Olivia, finding his own joy mirrored in her eyes. You did it, he said softly. You stood your ground, and it made all the difference. We did it, Olivia corrected, reaching for his hand. Together. The months that followed brought healing in more ways than one. Manning's arrest sent shockwaves through Oregon Territory, leading to investigations of other officials and a renewed commitment to justice in the courts. Howard Parker's newspaper thrived, his coverage of the scandal earning him recognition throughout the West. For Abram and Olivia, life settled into a rhythm of work and love that deepened with each passing day. The ranch prospered under their joint care, with Olivia proving to have a talent for raising chickens and tending the vegetable garden that fed them through the summer and into fall. When the time came for Manning's trial in November, they traveled together to Salem. Olivia testified with a strength and clarity that left no doubt as to the truth of her claims. Manning, once so powerful, seemed diminished in the prisoner's dock, his arrogance replaced by the desperate fear of a man facing his reckoning. The verdict, when it came, was swift and decisive. Theodore Manning was found guilty on all counts: corruption, abuse of power, assault, and attempted murder. He was sentenced to 20 years in the territorial prison, a term that would likely mean he would spend the rest of his life behind bars. As they left the courthouse, Olivia's steps were lighter than Abram had ever seen them. It's really over, she said, wonderment in her voice. He can't hurt anyone else. You made that happen, Abram said, pride swelling in his chest. Your courage saved not just yourself, but others who might have suffered at his hands. The winter of 1877 found them back at the ranch, the cabin made warm and bright by their shared love. As snow fell outside, reminiscent of the night that had brought them together, Olivia shared news that filled Abram's heart to bursting. I'm with child, she told him, her hands resting protectively over her still flat stomach. Come spring, there will be 3 of us. Abram gathered her in his arms, overcome with joy and gratitude for the life they had built from the ashes of tragedy. I love you, he whispered against her hair, more than I ever thought possible. And I love you, Olivia replied, her eyes shining with happiness. My rescuer, my partner, my love. When April arrived, it brought with it their son, a healthy boy with Abram's strong features and Olivia's green eyes. They named him James, after the marshal whose dedication to justice had helped give them the chance for this new beginning. Years passed, and the ranch grew and thrived along with their family. A daughter, Elizabeth, joined them 2 years after James, followed by another son, William, in the autumn of 1881. The scars on Olivia's back faded to silvery lines, a testament to her survival rather than her suffering. They rarely spoke of Manning, though they heard occasional news of him through Parker's newspaper. He died in prison in 1885, unrepentant to the end but powerless to hurt anyone again. On a warm summer evening in 1886, 10 years after Abram had found Olivia in the snow, they sat together on the porch of their expanded cabin, watching their children play in the yard as the sun set behind the mountains. You ever think about how different our lives might have been? Olivia asked, her head resting against Abram's shoulder. If you hadn't found me that night, Abram's arm tightened around her waist. I believe I was meant to find you, that in all the vast wilderness, in the worst storm of the decade, our paths crossed for a reason. Providence, Olivia murmured, a smile touching her lips. Or fate, or simply love, Abram said, finding its way through the storm. As darkness settled over the land they had nurtured together, Abram looked at the woman beside him, strong, loving, unbroken despite all she had endured, and felt a profound gratitude for the night that had changed both their lives forever. From the depths of winter's cruelty had blossomed a love that would warm them all their days. And in the years that followed, whenever snow blanketed the land around their home, they would hold each other a little closer, remembering how close they had come to never knowing the joy they found in each other's arms. The whip marks on Olivia's back had long since faded to faint lines, visible only to the touch, but the strength they represented, the will to survive, to fight for justice, to build a life filled with love, remained as vibrant and powerful as the day Abram had found her, barely breathing in the snow.